It's pretty much a soup bowl, isn't it?
It is a Super Bowl, 100%. Welcome back, guys, to Road Less Traveled, a podcast by Applewood Distillery, where we interview people throughout industries in general who are pushing the boundaries in their own given field. And today, we've actually got a really cool guest with us who I personally have all the time in the world for. She's a published writer. She is a cocktail enthusiast. She's a whiskey specialist. And recently, she's been working for Bakery Hill. That's right, isn't it? That's right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. We have the incredible Mel Hack with us, who you can, if you want to read what Mel Hack does, you can actually head to Australian Bartender magazine and have a look at all the incredible work that she does on a daily basis. But we were just having a chat before about what I've been doing this morning. Mm-hmm. And part of me feels like we're doing this, we're back in like, I hate to say it, but we're like back in COVID part 2, if that makes sense.
Okay, why is that?
Well, just because like digitally chatting to people is a little bit different from doing the podcast in person, but I know that for a lot of people, it's the best way to connect with them, especially when we all live in different cities. Australia is such a large country where, we've got 5 major cities pretty much, and that's where all the population is, and I can't be in all of these places at once. So it is kind of a little bit like being back in COVID part 2, like setting up a studio and doing this whole thing. But it's also really nice because you get to connect with like people like yourself and people across the industry. So it's pretty crazy. But you're doing, so Whiskey Alement is doing, because that's where you're working at the moment. You're working at Whiskey
Alement. I am, yes. Yeah, I work 4 nights on the bar there. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. How are you finding that? Is it good? Well,
my God. How do I even describe it? It is, well, it's the best job I've ever had. Whiskey Alement, they really value their people. I think that's that's what it boils down to, and education. They've only had 40 staff members in 14 years, which is just absurd, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it comes down to Brooke and Jules, and just they really, they root for their people. And once they end up, moving on and their time is up, they end up going on to do incredible, amazing things. And I think that's a big testament to Brooke and Jules and their legacy and what they're doing with the space. I get to try 10 to 20 new whiskeys every single week, and which is pretty insane. I think I've tasted so far around 500 whiskeys since working there in the past year, roughly. And that new whiskey is never been on the bar before, never tried before, from around the world. Which is really awesome. They've taken us to Tassie, done a lap of Tassie, traveled to...
You did a lap of Tassie?
Yeah, we did a lap of Tassie. We did 9 distilleries in 2.5 days.
Okay.
They do that every year, actually. That was just my first time. But they try to... every year.
They do a lap of Tassie every single year?
Yeah. They take the staff there to meet the producers, make connections, build a community, build a whiskey community, a connection between Tasmania and the mainland, because there is a bit of disconnect between Tasmania and I guess the rest of Australia and whiskey. I think a lot of people think that there's Lark in Sullivan's Cove, and that's what people think of of Tasmanian whiskey, and they're like, oh, it's all expensive, it's all this, and it's not necessarily that at all. And so I think it's really awesome that we get to bring whiskeys back from each of those distilleries that we go to, and get to talk about them and what they're doing, and educate, I guess. So yeah.
Do you feel like obviously you're connecting with people, you're building a whiskey community. Do you feel like Tasmania has a very distinct style then in terms of whiskey itself? Or do you feel like Australian whiskey is really the umbrella, and Tasmanian whiskey sits underneath Australian whiskey the same way that Highland whiskey might sit under Scotch whiskey as an umbrella?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I think that, I love when like just straight diving into this.
Go, yeah, 100%.
I think that I think they do generally sit under the Australian whiskey umbrella. I know that Tasmania is pushing legally for their own like
Like a geographical indicator.
yeah, away from the mainland.
Wait, so what's that going to entail? Do you,
So there's so I know a little bit. I don't know. I'm not probably the best to talk on this, but from what I know is that they feel that their climate is so diverse, so unique compared to the rest of Australia and the rest of the world, that they want their own sort of geographical indicator. And there's lots of chat about it in the Tasmanian whiskey community. There's some distilleries who are really for it and really pushing for it. And there's others that are really don't want that. Because they should just clumping everyone together and saying, whereas a lot of the more independent, smaller distilleries are saying, well, no, we don't believe that like we fit into that mold, I guess. It's similar to like Speyside, saying that you're like the Speyside versus Highland versus Isla, that kind of thing.
For sure.
Yeah, but to sort of come back to your question, do I think it's different? I think it is. So a lot of them, in terms of aging, typically, like very like broadly speaking, a lot of them age for a lot longer due to their cooler climate. And I would say that you've got a lot more coastal sort of salty whiskies as well, because they are, I guess, like an island of sorts. Like a lot of distilleries are like right on the edge of Tasmania, and so you get that like natural salty element into the maturation process. But apart from that, I think a lot of them are doing a very sort of similar style to the rest of the mainland. Like a lot of them are small batch, sort of single cask, small casks for a lot of the time, not always, but that, and a lot of fortified wines, wine barrels in very general terms, I guess. So,
okay, but here's my hot take on that.
Yeah, go on. I'd love to hear it.
Well,
because you studied whiskey for a long time.
I studied whiskey for a long time. Yeah, 100%. Well, like whiskey. Well, whiskey, Calvados, and cognac were my first love, just to give it a bit of context. And I'm a huge lover of those spirits. Same with gin, for the same reason that they're an incredible way of articulating terroir through a spirit. Like we often talk about terroir, or a sense of place in wine, because I think it's close to the ground. We talk about agriculture in wine all of the time. Like whenever you have an experience at a restaurant, the first thing a sommelier will say when they're pouring you a glass of wine is like what the farmer did, what the where it's from, what the weather was like. So already there you have an agricultural element of a person. So that there's a farmer attached to the bottle.
Yeah.
Secondly, you have this geographical element in terms of soil type. And then thirdly, you have a temporal element of like, that's what happened this year or in the year of the vintage. So I feel like, especially with these spirits, there's a huge push towards that of saying, especially with cognac and Calvados, because of their geographical indicators, they can say, oh, well, the vintage was good this year. It was then distilled this year, and it's been aging in that same place for this year. So it's a statement of the land. My hot take on Tasmanian whiskey, and the reason at the moment I don't believe that they've earned a geographical indicator, and this might be controversial, and I'm prepared for that. And honestly, I'm prepared to be proven wrong. Yeah. Oh, let's spill it. The reason that I don't feel like they're worthy of a geographical indicator at the moment is simply because I'm not sure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is every single piece of barley that is distilled in Tasmania, farmed in Tasmania, do all of the casks that they use, is that Tasmanian grown timber?
No.
Is the filling that then goes into them Tasmanian? Is it Tasmanian wine? Is it Tasmanian tawny? Is it Tasmanian beer? Is it Tasmanian apera? So until we have that kind of structure, that agricultural structure that supports something like a geographical indicator, I just don't think that they deserve it yet. And it's
fair chat.
I'm happy to have some haters in the. I feel like I'm going to get hate for that one now. I'm thinking about it. I feel like there's some pretty zealous Tasmanians.
It's fine.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. But I welcome it. And like, if anyone wants to talk about that,
it's important.
Really about. Well, yeah, I feel like if you're going to go for a geographical indicator, and I'm a huge supporter of an Australian geographical indication for whiskey, for brandy, for agave, because if all of the elements of and gin as well. I think it's really important we do it for gin and vodka and all of our spirits. Because if all of the elements of that product were farmed, were grown in Australia, we have an incredible sense of terroir. We have an incredible sense of place. And that should be championed and protected as an industry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, I think there are definitely distilleries doing that, but it's not entirely consistent. Yeah. So they'll do like some releases that are like very much just what you just spoke on, but I think in whiskey it is slightly different in a way because you're wanting to. A lot of distilleries want to be able to express their spirit character, right? And which is super important. And, you know, ex-bourbon, American oak casks are fantastic for that. And I think there's a lot of distilleries moving towards that and away from Australian wine barrels. Well, we're starting to see at least. And so I think that's where, I guess if we're still talking about Tasmania, that's where it's probably like you'd have a harder case about the geographical indicator about that. But then you look to there are some examples, but the ones I can think of are like Lower Marsh, for example, in Tasmania. They're sort of in the central, in the I guess the Highland region of Scotland. Of Tasmania.
Yeah, love it.
And they grow all of their own barley. They malt it themselves, mill it, mash it. They built their own still, distill it themselves, and then they age it predominantly in red wine barrels from their region that they. That's a fantastic example where I'm like, hell yeah, like that is quintessentially Lower Marsh, like that region. You can't make that whiskey anywhere else. You can't like replicate that. Same with Whippersnapper in WA.
Sure.
Yeah,
shout.
Yeah. They are using Australian oak timber to age their whiskey. Growing all of the grain is grown in that region. And then those barrels that they age their whiskey in, they're sending it off to, Yakandanda and backwards are using their casks. So which is incredible, is what we want to see, is like this beautiful little ecosystem that we've been, because we've been using American oak for so long, which, there is many issues with that, with transportation for starters. Like the sustainability behind that, the amount of emissions that probably produces every single year, just shipping those casks over here to make whiskey, stuff like that. But yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I think I really appreciate it. Is this kind of viewing? Sorry, let me start again. you've been working at Bakery Hill recently.
Mm-hmm.
You've been leading tours. You've been bottling. Have you been distilling as well?
I did my first run 2 days ago.
Oh my God! Congratulations! That's amazing. How was doing your first run on a still?
Really exciting. So it was more like, so for anyone, I guess, listening who've never heard of Bakery Hill, it is a, small family-owned distillery in Kensington. We just moved to Kensington from Bayswater. They've been around since 1999, and it's just there's three workers, basically, and myself and a couple of others. So David, the owner, Andrew and Matt are his two sons, and they run the distillery. So Andrew and Matt basically just guided me through it, showed me from start to finish the wash run. So I only got to do the wash run. I didn't get to do the second distillation. But no, it was really good because I'm actually studying the foundations of distilling and brewing at the moment. So it's with IBD, the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. And so it was really great to see in person what it's like, because on paper, it's chapters upon chapters of describing how it works. And then I walk in and he's like, yep, so you turn the kettle on, basically. Heat up the still. And, then the water starts bubbling, and then your alcohol, goes through here, goes down there, gets chilled. It gets sent into that, and then you check the temperature every half an hour. You check the ABV every half an hour. I'm like, okay. It was just a lot more straightforward than when you realize it, I guess. So yeah,
I think it's so. This is a particular thing which I'm so interested in, because I know that there are so many bartenders or people who start in hospitality, whether they start by being a server or whether they are a chef, and they might become enthralled and really passionate about spirit, and then they think to themselves, "Oh my goodness, I want to become a distiller. That's what I want to do." And I want to ask, was your first run of distillation what you expected? Because it seems like it wasn't what you expected at all.
It wasn't. I thought it was going to be a lot more complicated. I thought there was going to be a lot more calculators and I don't know, I guess science, a lot more. Again, and it's chemistry, what is going on in before your eyes, but you're kind of just leading it. You're not, the still works itself. Once that is built, you're in basic, pressing a couple of buttons to make it work in a way. That's, yeah.
No, see, I think
it wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be, I guess.
Yeah, so I think this touches on a really good point that I think a lot of people, just general consumers, don't appreciate. And I think it's the same thing that happens in fine dining, right? Bear with me.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of chefs, and obviously chefing has become very popular. It's become popularized. We see it in, Anthony Bourdain. We see it in The Bear, which I just call, PTSD. And it's become really popular and really kind of on trend to be a chef. But a lot of people don't understand what it is to be a chef or to be a bartender. It looks cool from the outside, but the actual workings of it are not as interesting. They're not as artistic as people think they will. As people assume that they are. And I think that's because the thing that you receive as the consumer is this final, polished, elegant product that you imbue as a consumer with a lot of, artistry and grace. When I think distilling is more like bricklaying than it is anything else, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I spent the rest of my time while waiting to do my half an hour checks, like cleaning the mashing area, like like I was like mopping floors with like dead yeast on the ground, like.
Oh man, what? You see what I mean? Like it's such an unexpected experience, because I think people want distillation to be like art so badly when it's more like a trade. It's way more agricultural than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
It's an agricultural product, 100%.
Yeah. And this leads me to something that I've been talking about with a lot of people, and I want to get your take on it.
Sure.
Obviously, at the moment, and I feel like a bit of a broken record, we're talking about excise in Australia. Right? Our tax system. And a lot of people that I've spoken to will hold wine as like the poster child for what an effective tax system on alcohol and what that looks like. They'll be like, look at the way wine is taxed. And I've got a bit of a curly one for you. Do you feel like if we marketed or if we talked about spirit across the board as a more agricultural product, we'd have a better chance of lobbying the Australian government to change that, because it speaks to like those good old agricultural Australian values? Or do you feel like at the moment we're taxing it kind of the same way we're taxing cigarettes and gasoline, because it's excisable, and those are the only other products that are excisable in Australia? Do you feel like the tax system can just be changed in terms of where it's already at, or do you feel like moving it to emphasize its agricultural provenance would be a great way to reform it? I know that's such a strange question. I know you're not in public policy.
Yeah.
But because you're working at Whiskey Alement, you're seeing people pay more for whiskey every single day, and then you're working at Bakery Hill, learning to distill and seeing it from, both sides of the coin. Like, what's your take on that?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I've never thought of it like that. That's really interesting. But I think you're 100% right, though, because I think especially like politicians and the, I suppose, politics in Australia, they've always really valued farmers they've wanted to value farmers and I have wanted to. That's it. They've wanted to, maybe not always done that, but I think there's a lot of pride for sure in Australia about our agriculture, and so mate, I don't think I have a great answer to this, to be honest, because it's not something that I read about or look into too much. It's definitely spoken about, and just that, all of the distillers are trying to lobby to freeze, freeze the rise in tax every 6 months. But I don't think I have a good answer for this. Apart from that, I think that would be an interesting take, because obviously nothing's working at the moment, at least. So, like they're not doing anything. But from what I have heard, one interesting take recently was that it's definitely something that is being taken seriously by the government. However, they've got so many other higher priorities that it's at the very bottom of the barrel. Like,
I enjoy that pun as well. That was a good pun. That was very good.
Thank you.
But I feel like that's government chat for like, we don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No. Yeah. I hear you. But yeah, that's what I was told most recently by someone I was chatting to about this. So like, yeah, they said that, they're taking it seriously, but it's not on the high priority list at the moment. Like, and so I'm like, okay. But yeah, but when will it be looked at? When is it? What's the time frame? Can you give us a time? Yeah.
Because honestly, I feel like if and I don't know the history of tobacco in Australia, but I feel like if we had a giant tobacco industry and if you could grow tobacco here, we would not have the laws on cigarettes that we do. Like, that's my thought about it. And I think the saving grace of spirits is that we now have this massive craft spirits industry throughout all of the big five. So we have vodka distillation, we have now agave distillation as well. We have a huge whiskey industry, or at least a proud craft whiskey industry. We have a massive gin industry, and we've got a gigantic rum industry that's mostly dominated by a few large players. So we have a massive distillation community in Australia that seems to be being overlooked because I don't think we're telling the right story. At least, mate. And again, I feel like I'm going to cop flack for saying that, but at the same time, I feel like the way we talk about booze and our culture of drinking in Australia is wine is this beautiful, refined, elegant thing, and spirit is, something to get drunk on. And I actually think that no, like you can't have a conversation about alcohol without noticing that there are two sides of the coin. And by the way, has everyone here has played Goon of Fortune? So you can't tell me that wine is this beautiful, elevated thing, and it's only that, and it's an agricultural product, and we should be, paying homage to it, when we've all literally fucking stoked a goon sack in our mouth as the first thing that we did when we were young. Like, those two things are completely counterintuitive and completely.
Oh,
that's just my read on it.
I have a goon sack just there, actually.
Oh yeah, you can see it. Oh my God, you do have a goon sack. Show me. It's like, show me you're Australian without showing me that you're Australian. Oh, there it is. Well, we have to include one. We had to include one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, look. Actually, speaking of wine, you're a big home fermenter. You're a big home fermenter, and you can't deny that. I've seen your Instagram stories, and they're ferment heaven. Have you got any like cracking ferments on at the moment?
Actually, I just did one today. Well, I had some mango skins and orange skins I chucked in the freezer like a week ago, and I was like, I'll do something with that eventually. And then,
cool. Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to see my freezer. It's just like my partner. He's just like, he has to check with me, like whenever he opens something like this, like will message me like, can I drink this?
Yeah.
Have you spent a week fermenting this?
Yeah.
Or can I just smash it? Like,
oh, great. Yeah. Like, well, I've spent a week fermenting it, but you can still smash it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I started a cheeky little mead today. I had some brewer's yeast in the fridge, and I thought I hadn't used it yet, and I was like, I haven't used brewer's yeast before making mead. I've used champagne yeast and mead yeast, another couple of other yeasts, but and then wild fermentation. But then I was like, see what this tastes like. Might just end up tasting like honey beer, but that's okay. That's fine. And then I just use some Beechworth honey, brewer's yeast, and orange skins and mango skins, and I'll let that go for a week. I'll taste it every couple of days. I use flip top jars. Probably should invest in one of the vessels with the airlocks and things, but I've just never gotten around to it.
Well, it's also like, it's oddly expensive, like a lot of those things, like
I think so.
Equipment.
Yeah,
quite a lot of it is like sitting up in like, for example, if you wanted one of those glass things with an airlock, also known as a carboy, it's
what, demijohn? Is it called a demijohn?
A demijohn. Yeah, 100%. That's its other name. Yeah. Like if you want one of those, they're like, if you want a big one, like if you want to do like 10 liters, they're like $80 to $120, unless you can find something that's, from an ex
hand or something.
Yeah, an ex winery or an ex small winemaker. They're expensive pieces of equipment, and especially for something that, like, you know, you're going to utilize waste, like most of the time for fermentation. It just puts a price cap on it, unfortunately, unless you're doing it again and again and again and again in massive formats. But I do have a question about fermentation for you, and its applicability in hospitality. Do you feel like fermentation, at least behind bars, is kind of on its way out? Like, do you feel like the average guest that comes into a venue is like, oh my God, show me your new ferments? Or are they more like, please make me a spicy margarita, please?
I think it's yes to both of those things. It depends on where in Australia maybe you're going to go for a drink.
Sure.
So like Melbourne and Sydney, I think, are like really into their fermentation game. And WA, actually, I know quite a few bars that have got really great fermentation programs. But it's a tricky one, I think, because so Whiskey Alements are maybe a little niche because I don't know if you've met Lachlan before, Lachlan Watler, bar manager. He's a little fermentation nerd, and he's a guru. He's had ferments on that menu for the past 5 years. And people come in for it. They love it. They always want to see what weird, wacky shit he's doing. And then now I have regulars who are like, Mel, what weird, wacky shit are you doing? And so, because they also like follow me on Instagram now, and they just like see my stories. And then they're like, when are you bringing this into the bar? And so sick. So that's really lovely. But so I think Whiskey Alements maybe like a niche in that regard. But you know what? I think I was chatting to a brand ambassador. I won't say who because I don't know if she want to be mentioned. But and she's saying to me recently, so she tastes, goes to bars all the time. It's part of her job, right? And so she gets to see whole range, plethora, like just like yourself, of menus all the time around specifically Melbourne. And she's like, I'm seeing ferments on too many bar menus. And she's like, and when I say that, it's because I know that some of these bartenders putting drinks on these menus aren't educated enough in what they're doing. Like they don't, like they're giving it a crack, which is great. But like, she's like, I've gotten sick before from it. And she's like, more so judging drinks for some cocktail comps. And she's like, there needs to be, she's like maybe more education around it.
How do bartenders get more education on that though?
Well, I mean, reading is one, I guess. Like art of fermentation's great. Going and having a chat to Luke Weirdy at Birdie, people like that. But on another flip side, legally, you need a license to do ferments. At least in Melbourne, the city council's been really, I don't know if you've been reading much about this, but they've been really tightening restrictions around it. So we've gone and to get our license. You have to get what it's called, but it's like a secondary like food health and safety license. Basically to show, you're checking your pH levels, you're sanitizing, there's like a list of like boxes you have to tick, showing that you're creating a fermentable, an alcoholic product essentially. And so basically that you're doing all the right things for the health and safety of the customer. And so I don't know how many venues are doing
actually doing that.
Yeah. So I think that's important as well, to be mindful of, because it's all fine to have a play around and have fun and try out these things. But I think you need to be like 100% confident what you're putting on a menu is safe to drink.
I think that's like the number one fucking rule. Like, like if you're putting poison on a menu, that's not a good thing. And we all collectively agree that that's not a good thing.
So. Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I
I
think...
feel like that's like the basic rule of hospitality 101.
I know.
Don't kill people, guys. Bad idea.
Yeah. So,
but,
I think that's something that's been, I guess a flag, a red flag was sort of risen in that way. And I was like, I didn't really even think about that. And she's like, so, yeah, that's,
Well, yeah, I also feel like you can definitely go and chat to the guys at Birdie. They are, I think, one of the best in Australia for bars to talk about fermentation and its applicability in bars. But also YouTube. Like, you can find anything online these days, and there is literally a YouTube channel for how to ferment anything you want to ferment, and they'll take you through an incredibly safe way of doing it, from, fruit wines to lacto fermentation to pickling to basically anything you want to do. Koji fermentation, which is now becoming, it's now becoming the newest buzzword. Especially across Melbourne bars. It's like we have, a koji caramel old fashioned and stuff like that.
Words in my mouth,
Oh my God, there's so much of it, which is great. And I love people pushing the boundaries. I mean, like, literally, podcast is called Road Less Traveled, man. I fucking love people pushing the boundaries, but I feel like a lot of it is done maybe irresponsibly and in a way which is just a bit problematic, maybe. But
fair.
I don't know. It's a weird one. So you're heading... Oh, sorry.
So the other one was the Fermentary as well in Fitzroy North. You can go there. You can do classes. They have a book. Sharon... forget her name. Sharon Flynn, her name is. There's classes. She has a book. And then she has like a bunch of like already made like scobies and yeast strains as well, so that you don't have to like make your own SCOBY or like
have to do it yourself
or anything like that. So that was the other one I just thought of to keep in mind.
Yeah, hell yeah. Now, besides fermentation, what has gotten you most excited about spirit in the past 12 months? Like, has there been a particular like whiskey that you've tasted? And it doesn't have to be Australian, by the way. Like, I'm talking globally. Has it been maybe any trips that you've done, like your trip to Tasmania? Was there something that inspired you? Or maybe it was a trip overseas that you were like, oh, this is blowing my mind. There's new flavors. Like, what about your experience in the last 12 months has been really exciting and inspiring?
Oh my God, that's such a big question.
I know. I'm like sitting for a big answer as well.
Yeah. Thanks. I am in so many things. I think it's one of those questions like at the bar, I get asked almost weekly, like, oh, what's your favorite whiskey?
Oh,
and I'm like,
far out.
Like all of it. Like,
yeah.
Because we taste, as I said, 10 to 20 new whiskeys every single week. So it is so difficult. But I don't know if you've had this might sound biased, and I promise you it isn't, okay?
Okay.
But I don't know if you've tried it either. But did you come to the Whiskey Set launch?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Okay. So Whiskey Alement, we also have a sort of, I guess, side business as well, which is called the Whiskey Set, which is an independent bottling company run by Brooke and Jules.
Yeah.
And they just released their 5th whiskey a couple of months ago. And it was so diverse in like the reaction, like overall like positive, but there was definitely like mixed, like, I don't know how to feel about this, because this is like everything I've been told about whiskey has now been like flipped on its head, and how I should drink whiskey and all this sort of thing. So it's this whiskey that they released is basically crystal clear, like looks like an unaged spirit.
Okay.
It's whiskey. It's a non-age statement whiskey, and it's from Kildalton Distillery, where Ardbeg is made. So I'm not saying it's Ardbeg, but it's made where it, you know what I mean?
Little winky face emoji.
And so it's a non-age statement, Kildalton whiskey, aged in a red wine barrel, even though it's clear, bottled at 63%, and it is how we serve it is over ice, straight from the fridge. And and when we first tried it, and they're like explaining it, and they're like, yeah, and we've tried it many different ways at different ABVs, different temperatures, and we're like, and then we chucked it on ice, and we were just like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
This is it. This is it. And I'm like, all right. So we tried it, and it turns from like still fantastic, delicious, like salty, ashy, like heavily peated Ardbeg, and then you chuck ice in it, and it just becomes like super viscous, like oil, like just rich, and it becomes zesty, and it completely changes the profile. And we're like, all right, this is how we're serving it, and it was just so exciting because I know, I mean, personally, you know, whenever we've done whiskey education, typically you're like, I always like to say, drink it however the fuck you want it. First of all, like if you want it neat, mixed, ice, water, I don't care. I want you to enjoy it. That's the main thing. And but like if you want to be able to appreciate it, maybe to, you know, to the bare bones, I'm like, it is how it's bottled is typically how that person who created it wants it to be drank, is at that ABV, at that temperature, that kind of thing. So, no, drinking it neat to start with, then adding water if necessary, and then adding ice if it's still a bit too full on for you, that kind of thing. But then we had it, and we're like, yeah, this is the best way to serve it. And that, that's well, because the beauty of it too is that was Brook and Jules's cask, right? So should probably say they buy entire barrels, and then they will taste it at different ABV points and be like, we want it at this, bottle it at, and please water it down to this ABV. And then once the bottles came over to Australia, then they tried it once more with ice, and they were like, yep, this is it. So that was really fun. It definitely screws a few noses.
Why? But this is my question. Like, why would that be controversial?
You know what? We had someone yell at Brooke at the launch, being like, "I'm never having whiskey with ice," and I think it's because over the years, people have now come to have this understanding that ice typically numbs your palate, and so kind of numbs some of the flavor, and so they find it like blasphemy that you do such a thing.
But like
that's the sort of response.
Yeah, but again, why? It's like if you enjoy something, like I feel like, oh man, this might get a bit deep right now, but I feel like this is the worst parts, and I'm going to stand on my soapbox for a second. I feel like sometimes the way the drinks industry behaves, especially when it comes to gatekeeping how something should be tasted, is probably the worst parts. I think I'm calling toxic masculinity on it, because invariably it's always a fucking dude being like, I'm never going to have whiskey like that. Oh, that's not how you drink whiskey. It's like there's no right way of doing this. And it's something which I talk about all the time. It's like people will ask, well, what's the proper way to do this? And I'm like, there's no proper way to do it, but I'm going to show you how we do it as professionals when we are tasting spirit for the sake of tasting spirit, for quality control, or for working out how we are going to tinker with it or artistically manipulate it. I'll show you that, but I'm not going to show you it in kind of this lens of, oh, well, this is the way to do it that's correct. Yeah. But I feel like people have such an obsession with being right and not being happy. Again, I feel like I'm really going to get fucking shot down here, man. Yeah, it is. It's about fun.
It's so silly what we do, right? Like, fundamentally, it's like we make a liquid that makes people intoxicated to have fun with. And then...
Also, that's such a weird thing to do. Like, we put... Like, it was one thing that I always talk about, which is, like, bartending and distilling. A lot of the time, you don't need training necessarily. And you are literally in a profession where someone will put something in their mouth that you give them. Like, the only other professions that people are allowed to do that in is like pharmaceuticals, besides like chefing and stuff. But like, you can literally not have an education, which is fine. You know, like, some people I don't get an education, and that's totally cool. Even though I'd prefer that they did. But then someone is like, I'm going to put that in my mouth. And it's totally fine. That's such a strange thing for me. And you're totally right. Like, our profession is oddly absurd in that way. Yeah. People are like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna consume that. And it's just totally fine.
With unwavering trust. Like,
yeah. It's nuts. It's nuts to me. Nuts. Anyway, dude, there's one thing I have to talk to you about, which was a huge part of your last year, huge part of your 2023, MixHaus.
Yes.
Massive.
Yeah, that was
massive.
That was
Can you tell me? Yeah, can you tell me, because I feel ashamed to say this, but I don't know enough about MixHaus, and I should know more. So I need you to tell me all about it. I should know. I should. First of all, but second of all, like, how can people support MixHaus? And like, do you guys have anything planned for this year, for 2020?
Early last year or the year before, was when MixHaus was created. So Shirley Young and Pip, they are incredible female bartenders over in WA, and it kind of all started based off the fact that they were going to all these like masterclasses and training over there, and they weren't seeing a whole lot of female representation, like in terms of females coming to the events and hosting. They're like, why is that? Like, we know plenty of female bartenders, but we don't see them at these events, and we want to. And so they started, basically, I think they started off like kind of with a sort of group chat, and was like, hey guys, what do you want to see more of? What do we need for our community? How can we get you to come to more of these events? And I think it kind of came down to the misrepresentation, and they're predominantly male presenters or speakers, or having men in the room that had made them feel uncomfortable in the past or present. And they're like, well, I'm not comfortable, and I won't be showing up. And I think that was sort of the basis of it. And they turned that into a non-for-profit. So this is a educational platform built by women for women, or non-identifying folks too. And they want to basically educate the female bartenders of Australia. So it started out just in their one state, and then I guess the Sydney Bar Week last year was, I guess, the launch for the rest of Australia. So they're taking it global, national this year. They're traveling to each state, doing masterclasses and seminars, on, a whole array of different topics, brands, products, in general. So last year, I reached out to Shirley. I saw it on Instagram what they were doing, and I saw that they were going to be doing an event for Bar Awards, and I was like, how do I get involved? Can I volunteer in some way? And she was like, actually, we need a team leader for Victoria for this event. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. I would love that. And so it was my task to kind of rally, I guess, a team of, I think there was 4 or 5 of us. And so I ended up having Cara Devine from Bumba, and oh my God, what's the YouTube channel called? Drinks with Cara Devine?
Yeah, Behind the Bar.
Behind the Bar
with Cara Devine. And it's an awesome YouTube channel. It is so good.
Fantastic.
Check it out. It is
awesome. And she's also just opened a bar in Newcastle as well. Good Water. Incredible.
Oh, such a good bourbon bar. I have been. I went to their opening maybe 2 weeks ago now. And my goodness, it was just sensational. It's such a good bar, opened by such good people. Mm-hmm. And I feel like unfortunately there's a bit of a story of venue closures this year around Australia. Right. But I feel like Good Water, alongside maybe, I think, Bar Bellamy, are going to be the feel-good stories for 2024. Just good bars made by good people doing just really down-to-earth hospitality. I think that's really what it's coming back to. But anyway, great bar. Go to Good Water. It's sensational. Please. So you had Cara Devine.
Cara Devine. Grace Welsh as well from the Black Pearl. And then we also had Kimmy Kim from Whisky Alement as well, and then myself. So it was the 4 of us, and we were tasked to make a couple of drinks, do a 45-minute takeover of each state. It was incredible. It was balls to the wall, packed the whole time. It was a bit hot, a bit sweaty, a whole lot of fun. And honestly, since then, that community has been I think a saving grace for so many of us. Because before that, we've got a couple of sort of Facebook groups for female only on Facebook, but it's not we're not engaged in it, often. It's maybe a couple of posts about jobs and that kind of thing. But, since then, we chat weekly, all of us. There's about 40 of us in this chat, and it has been so eye-opening, so just heartwarming, because before that, speaking from my own experience, I didn't have a whole lot of female, mentors or anyone to really talk to about my own experiences and what I go through as a female bartender. So to have that relatability and to be able to talk to somebody oh my God, I know exactly how you feel, was just amazing. I think Anna Mitchell put it really beautifully recently. She said it felt like hope, and I think that was really a gorgeous, just short and simple way of putting it, because we're just there for each other. And I think it's opened doors for a lot of females as well, constantly just sharing ideas and collaborating and bar takeovers and bar swaps and that kind of thing, and just wrapping our arms around each other, and it's just really lovely.
So
and then
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Shirley is coming to Melbourne to 1 or 2 in a couple of weeks' time, which will be awesome. And she's going to Good Water as well. And I know that Cara has jumped on board to as part of the lead charge with Shirley and Pip. So That's really exciting.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
massive.
Massive.
So
Yeah.
how if you were a young woman in the industry, how do you get involved? Do you just is there a Instagram? Is there a Facebook?
Yeah, so they've got an Instagram page, and I would just say message them, hey, can I be like part of the group chat? Can I be a part of the community? And honestly, I'd feel like they would like open their arms straight away. It's not like when I say like a group chat, like I guess it's like a unofficial sort of thing at the moment. It's not like we're a club. I don't know.
We're a registered organization.
Yeah, like anything like that. It's just, yeah. I guess it's a community that's been built in the past, I guess, 6 to 8 months, and it's just rapidly building, which is amazing.
That's so exciting. And what are the plans for this year? Do you have more coming up for Sydney Bar Week as well?
Yes. So, I don't know if I should say too much because I haven't spoken to Shirley. But
okay, copy that.
I'll say this: they're doing a massive event, part of Bar Week, and I think it's going to be very different to a lot of other panel chats you might have seen before. I don't know if you remember the when Nate did the Please and Thanks, he did a ally chat at the Catfish about 2 years ago now. I think it was about that. And it was which was incredible. It was and we've had quite a few different sort of renditions of this over the years, I believe, of I guess women coming up, speaking their stories, and a lot of the time it's been predominantly female in the room. This happens every year in International Women's Day, right, as well. Like you have like a panel chat of women, they talk about their experiences, the good and the bad, and it's predominantly women in the room. And we cry and hug each other and get pissed at the end, and I think it's great that we can talk about these things, and if it's to do with harassment, if it's to do with inequity or inequality, any of those topics. But then I feel like I know I've felt this, and a lot of the women at MixHaus feel this, is that there isn't much done after that. It's like, okay, well done. You've had your chat, and then we're just going back to regular programming is sort of like how it feels a lot of the time. And so I think what they're planning on doing this year is going to be really special, and a lot of education involved, and really going to try and rally as many men in the industry to come to this and listen to this as well. So, yeah, that's all I'll say on that, because I don't know how much they would want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I love it. And you know what? I'm going to be there with bells on as well. I'm so excited for what you guys have planned for MixHaus. I think it's awesome. It's so cool. And I'm blown away by it. I think it's wicked. And it's something that I think the hospitality industry sorely needs.
Oh my God, yes. Sorely needs.
Well, Mel, it's been awesome chatting to you. I really, really appreciate it. You can check out MixHaus online. You should definitely go to their events when you see MixHaus up and around. If you want to go and chat to Mel about whiskey, she'll be at Whiskey Alement 4 nights a week, right?
Yes, I'm there on the bar tonight. I'm there
awesome.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And then you can come see me at Bakery Hill on a Sunday if you like.
Ooh.
I do the master classes there with Andrew. And then if you ever want to chat about anything, I'm always open on my Instagram. I've always found that a corny name, but I've never changed it. How do you feel about it?
I love it. I was literally about to just say go follow Mel on Melrose Mixes. It is awesome. Do it. just simply for the fermentation stories. That's what I live for. I love that. So I'm so there for it. I really
I appreciate that.